let's dive straight in. Martin is almost literally just off the plane, having arrived this morning, and Victoria arrived earlier this week on Monday. So I wanted to begin by asking what the atmosphere is in Beirut, which is, after all, a very atmospheric city. Atmosphere is a very important, almost tangible thing in Beirut. So how does it feel in Beirut at the moment, Martin?
Well, good evening, everyone. You're right, Beirut is an atmospheric place. It's an intoxicating place. It has a positive energy. It generally is quite resourceful. It's been through decades of strife before, and it has an inherent sense that this will continue. Despite that, though, I guess what we're looking at now in Lebanon is something which the society hasn't had to confront until this point, and that is quite a potent, venomous Sunni Shia sectarian sort of tension, and that does underlie a lot of the decision making or the non-decision making. It influences the atmospherics in the city itself. There have been suicide bombings. There have been assassinations. The streets are quite spooked. They're quite empty. There are lots more checkpoints than there have been in the many years that I've been in the region, and it has a feeling of a place that isn't at ease with itself. Mm-hmm. I mean, in many ways it never really is, but this seems to be a different layer of complexity that the society doesn't seem to be able to adapt to at this point.
Victoria, is that what you'd have said?
Well, I would pick up on something that Martin was saying there about that it always sort of feels this way. I remember the first time that I arrived to Beirut, and it was 3 years ago, so it was before anything had started. And at that time, the taxi driver on the night of my arrival said to me, "You've picked the worst time to come to Beirut. It's in a crisis." Every time I kept on leaving and coming back to Beirut, it was always in a crisis. So in a sense, it always feels like it's sort of teetering on the edge of chaos. But having said that, I also agree with Martin in saying that there are certain things that sort of feel different, and I think that a couple of incidents that have happened in this month also kind of provide a little bit of a snapshot into that, if you like. And for me, I think it was the week before last, I can't remember, you might remember better than me, but there was a rapper who got arrested last week because he was walking in Haret Harek, which is one of the areas that has been bombed a couple of times in the last few weeks. And I think it really shows, it captures this moment wherein there is so much heightened kind of fear, communitarian fear and vulnerability, and it shows this fear and the rising Islamism. So I think that's one interesting kind of insight into the current moment. But if I can just also add one more. Again, in this month, there was in the news sort of a statement made from a group that was called the Youth of Arsal. Arsal is a town on the border of Lebanon, and it's an area wherein a lot of refugees have flown to in the past few years. It's almost doubled in population since that crisis has started. And the statement read like this: to all the Syrian refugees who own businesses, you have 48 hours to close your businesses, or you will be a legitimate target. So I think it's showing this kind of increasing fatigue that these kind of areas that were already impoverished are beginning to have with.
Is it a process of escalation of risk towards a big explosion?
I think that's an accurate way to frame it. We can't see what's happening in Lebanon, obviously, in isolation from what's taking place in Syria. It bleeds directly into it. But there has been an increased security risk as the nation state of Syria has, I wouldn't say unravelled, but it's certainly been under a lot of pressure. There have been heightened sectarian tensions at various steps along the way. The Hezbollah acknowledging it was playing such a public, proactive role in May last year was a seminal moment, and certainly the start of the suicide bombings in the Hezbollah areas in the last 3 or 4 months has certainly taken things to a new level. But I guess overriding it all is a sense that this isn't going away. This is going to get worse, And that's what people are, I guess, deeply unsettled about, that doesn't appear to be any limits to how far this could go.
If we sort of just go deeper into this gloom for a moment, could you answer to how long? I mean, how far away is Lebanon from an explosion?
It's difficult to answer that without bringing in Iraq and Syria. It's directly and wholly influenced by the events in the rest of the region. And what I would say, if there isn't a resolution to Syria at some point in the next 2 to 3 years, the real risk, and it's a very significant risk, is that we could head inexorably along a path towards a balkanization of the entire Levant along ethnic sectarian lines. And that would mean the end of the nation state of Lebanon, Syria and Iraq. That's how significant it is at the moment.